last night, I was on Tucker Carlson, and I said this.
Can't have freedom of speech if you can't express yourself in a meaningful place. This is like the Germans with the Jews behind the wall. They would put them in the ghetto. Well, this is the digital ghetto. You can talk all you want. Jews, you do whatever you want behind the wall. Well, that's not meaningful. And that's where we are. That's where millions of Americans will be.
So last night, the American Jewish Committee, the AJC, the constant weaponization of history's darkest chapter is deeply offensive and an affront to the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust. There is no comparison between big tech companies enforcing their community standards and the Holocaust. Period. None. Period. Apologize, Glenn Beck. I had Jake Tapper said that you're either a moron or an anti-Semite. That anyone who would believe what I said about the digital ghetto and talk about ghettoization is a moron or an anti-Semite. Well, I wanted to get the guy who actually coined the term. He has said digital ghettoization. I think it's the same thing, but his name is Edwin Black. He was on with me yesterday. He has been nominated for a Nobel Prize, or his name submitted for a Nobel Prize, Pulitzer Prize, 11 times. 11 times. I don't think he's a moron. I don't think he's an anti-Semite. I want to make sure I'm in line with the man I think is one of the greatest Holocaust historians alive today. Welcome to the program, Edwin Black.
And thank you for having me, Glenn.
So, Edwin, I want to make sure, because, I mean, I think you know me well enough to know how I feel about the Holocaust and Israel and Jews. I mean, I've won the Defender of Israel Award from Sheldon Adelson. It was presented to me by Sheldon and Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, I'm serious about these issues. Am I wrong? Did I say something out of context here?
No, you didn't say anything wrong, and I think that the criticism you've received is quite ill-advised. I think it's a measure of our times, not a measure of the accuracy of the claim. So here's why you used the word digital ghetto. It's because I coined the term digital ghetto and algorithm ghetto. And I did that in 2018 as the keynote speaker for Holocaust Day, of the official Governor Holocaust Day, speaking in the rotunda of the Michigan State Capitol in Lansing. And I summarized my remarks, including the algorithm and ghetto and the digital ghetto, for an editorial which ran in the Times of Israel and about 30 other papers and History Network News. And I was concerned, and I remain even more concerned, that the activities of the oligarchs of digital control are in fact trying to shunt us into digital ghettos. Now, I should mention that a ghetto, even though my parents are Holocaust survivors and they used to think it was a Polish word, is actually an Italian word, a Jewish Italian word, which originates from the 16th century from one of the first named ghettos, and that was in Venice. And the word comes from, it is argued by many that the word may come from the Jewish or Hebrew word get, which is a divorce, but it also means being put aside from or separated from. During the 19th century, the ghettos became much, much worse, and during the Holocaust, they became the first step along the way toward annihilation for the Jews. This, of course, was facilitated by IBM in its 12-year alliance with the Nazis, which I wrote about in IBM, and the Holocaust. Several years ago, when I was writing my book, War Against the Weak, about eugenics and genetics, the word was coined genetic ghetto, and was used largely by Hadassah and many others who were seeking legislation that would not permit people to take testing of individuals of their genetic background for the purpose of denying them employment, credit, access to housing, etc. And I believe the genetic ghetto was one of the earliest modernizations of this terrible place, ghetto. And of course, my parents were in a ghetto. You use this term because that's exactly what I've observed and what many people have observed. I think that there was nothing historic about the criticism involving history in the criticism that you received. I think this is just another byproduct of anything that anyone says is being transmogrified and weaponized against them. I am very concerned about the breach of the concept that you do not use Hitler as a criticism, even though numerous leading Holocaust historians have called Trump a Hitler, and I don't like that.
I have to tell you, we can use Nazis, we can use concentration camps, we can use stormtroopers, we can use Trump, or Hitler to describe the Trump administration, but you can't ever do it. It is so important to me, Edwin, that we, the phrase "never forget" doesn't mean don't forget what they did. It means don't forget how we got to the showers. And it's the seeds. Unless you pull those weeds up early and you recognize them no matter which side. I mean, I would be saying this if the Republicans owned Facebook and Google and they were in bed with the government and they were silencing people. I would be saying exactly the same thing. These are the seeds, the weeds that start to spread up. And if you don't cut them off early, it's too late. Am I wrong?
Well, I of course, have seen the misuse of this term by so many of Holocaust terms. I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger the other day make reference to a Kristallnacht,
yes,
which is something I studied in 1938, which involved the murder and imprisonment and burning of many thousand Jewish lives and institutions,
and also had the army and the police standing by doing nothing. Yes, because this was one of the best manifestations, Kristallnacht, of the authorities becoming part of the affliction in the worst way. Naturally, that started on January 30th, 1933. Everybody needs to take a breath. When we are talking about a digital ghetto, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about people who wish to silence you. We're talking about people who wish to marginalize others. We're talking about corporations that are trying to follow the most awesome steps of marginalization. And once again, we're only talking about this for the digital means. It was IBM that made it possible for Hitler to perpetrate the Nazis. That does not mean that this is a Nazi regime or Twitter is part of a Nazi regime. But what it does mean is that high tech was involved in the worst crime in the history of humanity. I've heard people talk about, well, these are private companies. Google's a private company. Twitter's a private company. They're not private companies. They're public companies.
and they are owned by all of us. And there's a public interest in these companies abiding by the law. And I believe it was Marsh versus Alabama. Am I wrong? In about 1946.
Yep. The private companies. I talked about that last night. Yep.
That stated that a private company cannot engage in illegal activity or improper activity, regardless of its terms and conditions.
Yeah, it can't. When it comes to the private ownership versus the Constitution always must remain supreme. Edwin, we'll have you on again. I'm sorry if I said something out of turn last night. I don't think I did.
You didn't say anything out of turn. The out of turn is from my friends, and they know who they are. Tone down the rhetoric. Tone down the rhetoric. If you have a problem, give me a call. You know who you are, and you know who I am. Keep the Holocaust out of this, but we need to look at the steps, and we need to understand that right now people are following the step of identification, exclusion, and confiscation.
Jeez.
And
those are bad things.
That is where we want it to stop. The purpose of the historian is to look ahead and over the horizon based on what he has seen come before. That's why we are here. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. God bless you. Edwin Black. Jake Tapper, I hope you actually hear that interview and hear it with your heart, not your head.